I've read things from the director about his intention to make this like the most brutal of the series, and that's a Hostel movie. Like, I don't need that in my Evil Dead.
Everything's like the Terrifier movies now. You have to be so extreme in your gore that this was too realistic in its gore.
This is a home invasion movie with Deadites. I have zero patience for a franchise entry that is going to break its own rules and the established rules of the franchise. Hello, friends and listeners. You have a brand new episode of Watch Skip Plus, your go-to source for insightful and pop-cultured movie reviews. My name is Jose, also known as Cupcake. I'm joined by my co-host, Mike the Wildebeest, he of the Yellowstone hat, which he just tipped. And then I would love to introduce our guest. You can see him on one of the squares. This is Josh. Josh, how are you doing? First-time guest. Hopefully, long-time listener.
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's fun to be here. I'm glad to have this conversation with you guys. See what you guys think.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you want to introduce what we're reviewing to this week?
We're going to be talking about the new film from Sebastian Vanacek, Evil Dead Burn.
Yeah, Evil Dead Burn.
Now, Josh, you're a critic,
Evil Dead
right?
Rise.
You write for. Who do you write for?
I write for ScreenAnarchy. That's my main outlet. And I reviewed this one earlier in the week, so I already have some thoughts.
Yes.
Excellent.
Before we get into this, really quick, because I have you on here, tell me about how you got RR into theaters in the U.S. I just got to hear about that story.
Yeah.
Because those who don't know, RRR, which became a huge success, this great Indian film that I know, Josh, you helped champion and you actually brought back into theaters in the U.S. and helped push its numbers to making it one of the most successful Telugu films in U.S. history. So tell us how that happened real quick.
It was the result of a long relationship with the filmmaker. I'd known S.S. Rajamouli for over a decade by the time RRR came out, having booked his films at my film festival, Fantastic Fest, which I used to work at in the early 2010s, and then just sort of keeping in touch. I've been to India a couple of times. I was able to visit him on the set of one of his previous films. And so
cool.
When RRR came to theaters here, and a few non-Indian people started to go see it in the initial release and were losing their minds over it, the producers and the marketing team got in touch with me, asking if I could help them like sort of capitalize on that, and then it just sort of snowballed from there.
If you have not seen the movie RRR we're talking about, stop and go see it. I believe it's still on Netflix. It's out there. It's amazing. Yeah. It's so awesome.
And actually, I had guested on a Not a Bomb episode that Josh guested on for The Man That Feels No Pain. And that's where I learned about Josh, who is very, very well versed in the Bollywood films as well as the other languages of India. You have opened up my eyes, at least from that episode, about those other films, and I dove into some of the classic stuff, and I think that's amazing. And then obviously you worked for Fantastic Fest, which what a great festival. Just really briefly, how'd you get started with Fantastic Fest, just in terms of working for them?
It actually it was as a result of S.S. Rajamouli's film Ega back in 2012, which is a film about a man who gets killed and comes back as a housefly to take revenge on the person who murdered him. I saw that in theaters here in Dallas. It played with no subtitles, but I was absolutely enamored with it. At the time, the founder and of the site that I write for, which was Twitch Film at the time, ScreenAnarchy now, was also the international programming coordinator for Fantastic Fest. And just on a whim, I emailed him saying, look, there's this movie. Can I help get it out there? Because there was no way that anyone was going to see the movie. There was no real streaming culture back then. And Telugu films weren't on anyone's radar. A very, very small handful of people who are not Telugu even knew that these things existed in theaters. And so when I offered to do that, then Todd brought me on board at Fantastic Fest. We booked a bunch of films over the decade that I was there, including some great stuff. A horror film called Tumbad that was really fantastic. There's another action film called Jallikattu from a few years ago that was India's Oscar submission. Just a bunch of really fun stuff that we showed in that decade that I was at the festival. So it was just, I want people to see this movie. It worked out. People loved it. And then it just kept going from there.
We are so happy to have such an esteemed guest on our little podcast.
Yeah, I'm just in awe because I'm really glad you're here. And yeah, if it wasn't for you and gosh, a few other Christina Winters and Heather Seabach and Sean Smith and Eustanos, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have really dove into a lot of the stuff from the Telugu and Bollywood and all that kind of fun stuff. So cool. Awesome stuff.
Thanks. There's a lot of cool stuff to see.
It really is.
Oh yeah. And speaking of cool stuff to see, or maybe not. We'll find out later. We come to Evil Dead Burn. So this is the
sixth
feature. Sixth
not
feature.
Not including the TV series.
Yep.
Exactly. So it's the sixth feature in the Evil Dead franchise. Relevant personnel for this franchise, Sam Raimi. Some of our younger viewers or listeners might know Sam Raimi from like the Spider-Man films, but he got his start in this sort of like mondo action comedy stuff with it was called Crime
Wave.
Yeah, Crime Wave, and then came The Evil Dead in 1981. Raimi and his brother Ivan helped to sort of like write this. His producing partner Rob Tappert, they have the production company Ghost House. Tappert also, I think he's married to Xena, or was married to Xena at some point. And then of course Bruce Campbell, he's the actor who appeared in many of the Evil Dead films, the early ones, and Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV series that Josh had mentioned. So 81 is The Evil Dead, an indie horror film, probably one of the most known indie horror films that kind of came to fame. I remember critics calling it ferocious. And then 87, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn came out. For me, as a theatrical experience, I'd seen that as a kid, and it was one of the scariest experiences for me in the theaters, even though the film is laced with this dark comedy, sort of manic Acme cartoon feel at certain points. And then 92, we got Army of Darkness, which was a huge swing in a different direction, sort of melding Evil Dead with the action stylings of Crime Wave. And that just was a genre buster, genre mashup. Total classic. 2013 came the soft reboot. 2013's Evil Dead, and this starred Jane Levy, Shiloh Fernandez, Jessica Lucas, Lou Taylor Pucci, who we were just talking about his nude butt in Touch Me, which we reviewed last week. And then Evil Dead Rise in 2023 was the continuation of that soft reboot. Initially was supposed to have been only for streaming and apparently tested through the roof. So they released it, and it actually became the highest grossing film of the entire franchise. There's an Evil Dead musical, folks, which a couple of my friends have been in. They absolutely love it. There's a splash zone like SeaWorld. It's fantastic. And then we've got our comics. So they've had graphic novels where it's been crossovers, things like Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, or Marvel Zombies versus the Army of the Darkness, right? Josh, what is your experience with the Evil Dead franchise? Is it something that you love?
Yeah, it is. As a child, I was terrified of horror movies. I had like a crippling phobia. I didn't watch horror movies until I was a teenager. And the film that broke that open was Evil Dead 2. I saw Evil Dead 2 when I was in, 13, 14, something like that. I realized that I could be scared, and it was exhilarating, and it wasn't necessarily just going to give me nightmares and make me wish that I'd never watched the film. And so that emotion has stuck with me, and now like horror is my main thing. Like I love weird on top of everything. The stranger a film is, the more excited I am to see it. But if I have to go with a straight genre, horror is always going to be the thing that I gravitate towards. And it's because of Evil Dead 2. And you mentioned in your sort of rundown of this series that they're all somewhat different. Like the films tonally are pretty spread out, and that's one of the things that I really like about Evil Dead is that you don't always know exactly what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Unlike some other stuff, which I have a fondness for things like Friday the 13th, where you know exactly what you're getting into. Like that's comforting, but I don't know that it's exciting in the way that an Evil Dead film is.
Mike?
Yeah, for me, it started with actually seeing Army of Darkness in the theaters because my mom was a big Bridget Fonda fan. So little did she know that she was taking us to something that was going to open up a whole new can for me. She was like, like about an hour in, she's like, this is really kind of ridiculous. Do you guys want to stay? And I was like, of course, I love this.
Yes.
The closest thing to that, was like Monty Python. I'd never seen anything that took this kind of funny, like medieval vibe that just, I don't know, the gore, the horror, the comedy. And then as soon as it was over, my mom and I found out that it was part of many other films, and we went and rented Evil Dead 2. It wasn't until I hit my early 20s that I finally found a VHS copy and was able to watch The Evil Dead from the early 80s. But, my love for the franchise has grown. But as you can see from my Army of Darkness shirt, that's where it all started from. And I love to this day still, I prefer comedic horror films. I love when a horror film can add a little comedy. I like when they can place a well-placed joke or a nice little splatter comedic vibe. Something like that can kind of, to me, elevate horror to a point, because in the 2000s where everything was just so grimy and goopy and we went through that whole torture porn, to me, like, there's nothing better than a good comedy horror. So I love that we still have that around. And it's kind of fun to see how these play with tone.
My feeling on this is it is a very delicate balance when we talk about comedy and horror. I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, like there's Heart Eyes, which just failed for me, which was miserable. But then you get that fine line between giving the audience a heart attack and then suddenly like a burst of relief with something comedic or grounded. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a fan. What it allows the audience to do is it lulls you into a bit of a comfort. This has been talked about a million times, but the same way that horror films can sort of galvanize an audience, a room full of people specifically, to all reacting with the same emotion at the same time. Comedy does the same thing. And so the scares act the same way as big gags or big jokes in comedy films. And so having a good balance of the two is often very effective. I don't mind over-the-top comedic films that are horror themed,
Yeah,
things like
there's gore and splatter.
Yeah. I think I watched the most recent two Evil Dead movies last night and this morning because I hadn't seen them in a while. I hadn't seen Evil Dead, the 2013 film, in several years, so I wanted to go back and just sort of figure out where it placed in the, not necessarily in the continuity, because I don't think that's a super huge concern. And even there is a bit of there are moments of levity. It's not a funny film. It's not.
Right.
It's not even as funny as The Evil Dead, the original film, which is a horror film, but it's made by a guy who loves the Three Stooges, and you have that Three Stooges vibe in it. Like Army of Darkness, like you said, is like a Harryhausen Three Stooges mashup. These last three have certainly like tamped down the humor and made it sort of an undercurrent, but they're still allowing it to exist in the way that the demons themselves have a sense of humor, because they're all of the mayhem they're creating is for their own amusement, essentially. Yep. In most of the series,
playing on people's fears. I noticed that too. I rewatched the last two as well, and there's definitely a sort of snarky Demon Burn Book feel to some of the commentary. Okay, so really quickly, let's do the cast and crew. You mentioned, Josh, Sebastian Vanacek, born in France. He has a Czech background, hence the Vanacek. This film is only his second film. He co-wrote this with a gentleman named Florent Bernard, who has gotten some other films off the ground in a different genre. They've been dramatic and comedic a little bit. They both wrote Vanacek's debut, which was a film originally titled Vermin. It was a Netflix co-production, and then it was retitled as Infested. It's on Shudder. It's on AMC. Best Director, Best Picture at 2023 Fantastic Fest, Special Jury Prize at the Cycus Film Festival, and then nominated for a César. These are the French Oscars, and then a Fangoria Award as well. I managed to watch this. It reminded me of like Rec meets Arachnophobia. There is some first-time filmmaker stuff going on there. Bless you. Hopefully Mike is not sneezing out baby spiders. But Josh, had you seen Vermin or Infested? And what were your thoughts on that?
Actually, I didn't get the chance to see it at Fantastic Fest. It was last year that I was there. My wife did, though. My wife saw it at the festival, and she really enjoyed it. So she made sure that we caught it when it came online, and I enjoyed it. I think it was one of a couple of like spider infestation movies that happened around the same time. I was looking at my Letterboxd review, and I said, "This is fun," which is, I mean, that sounds about right.
Yeah. There was a weird last minute political commentary thing that they plugged into it. And I turned to my husband and I was like, I think this would work better if we lived in France and realized that there was a social strata immigrant feel to the residents of the apartment building that I was missing. Mike, what your thoughts on Infested?
Yeah, it reminded me of Attack of the Block, except not quite as funny. So I enjoyed about it. It has a weird kind of bluey gray tint to the whole movie. I don't know if this is the director's thing. It kind of bothered me also in Burn. He seems to love this blue-gray tint that just seems to be a part of his last two films. That kind of bothered me overall, the overall look and feel of it. And I just saw Infested last night.
Yeah.
It's fine, but I don't like the overall look.
So Evil Dead Rise was shot by Dave Garbett, who was the cinematographer for Ash vs. Evil Dead. But this film, the cinematographer is Philippe Lozano. He's French. If anyone has seen Mads, that's also on Shudder and AMC Plus. Please check that out. A found footage viral outbreak film that is done as a one shot, and it is fantastic and gory and gross and disturbing. Lozano, he's such a great eye. He shot the films Nun 2, Cobweb, and then the short Blood Machines. Man, his visuals are so amazing. Now, Nun 2, Cobweb, not great films, although I loved Cobweb.
I did too.
I don't care what people say. And one of my favorite things about DPs is when they operate a camera, and Lozano always operates a camera. Josh, any experience with the films that I've mentioned, or Lozano? Any thoughts on him?
I mean, I think we all kind of nodded at Cobweb. I love Cobweb. Lizzie Kaplan's performance in Cobweb was one of my favorite performances of the last decade. She's just fantastic. It got a lot of shit at the time, but I think that she was perfect in that film. And actually, mentioning that those are the same DPs actually does make sense, because Cobweb does have that same sort of color timing and look as what we're looking at here. Absolutely.
Mike, thoughts, Lozano?
Yeah.
Other than the great.
I'm a great fan of all of those works. All those films don't look alike. They don't look the same. No. So that's pretty cool, especially Blood Machines, which is beautiful and chippy.
I need a full-length Blood Machines. Where is it? What's Vanacek, so Lozano, get on this, please. Our music is by Double Danger, which I keep reading as Double Danger. I don't know why. It's like moped for moped, whatever. But they are an electronic and film score duo, Douglas Cavana and Xavier Caux, Caux. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is only their second score. They also scored Infested. And really quickly, our cast, let's do this. Suila Yacob, gorgeous actress, former rhythmic gymnastics competitor. Yes, folks, you heard that right. Hails from Geneva. Her background is Tunisian and Flemish. That's why she's so beautiful, folks. Many will know her from Noé's Climax, which is in itself an experience, quite like this film. And then recently, Carpenter's Son, the Jesus epic with Nicolas Cage. I don't know what's happening. I didn't see that. Any thoughts on Jacob? Josh, had you seen her before? Her work?
I did not realize that I had seen her before in Climax, but I do really like Climax. But apart from that, no, I think she does well, we'll get into this more, but she
Oh,
does
yeah.
fine with what she's given.
Absolutely.
So
Mike,
I'll leave it
thoughts
at that.
on
I like
Jakob, our lead?
this is the first I recognized her in anything was this. And then, yeah, when I went through her IMDb, I was like, okay, I'd seen this. And oh, she popped up in this. Okay, cool. So, but I thought she had a great vibe and look. And like Josh
Nice.
said, I think she did what she could with the material for sure.
Next, we have Hunter Dowen. He's son of Australian tennis player Peter Dowen. People will know him from Wednesday and Daredevil Born Again. He is openly gay. Weirdly, Bryan Cranston married him and his husband, who's a producer. All I could say through this movie with his dark hair was, Anton Yelchin called and wants his DNA back. Like, I just couldn't, I was like, it's Anton. I don't know. Mike, you're nodding. Did you feel the same
Yeah, he
way?
looks like, we do this a lot. He looks like Anton Yelchin and, what's his name from It? The taller brother from the Skarsgård. Is it Bill?
Oh, Bill.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
looks like those
Yeah,
two had a baby. That's what that's what he looks like to me.
Exactly. So this is filmed in New Zealand. So the rest of the cast is local. Unless you obsess over New Zealand television like me, you might not recognize these actors or actresses. But Tandy Wright cropped up in Shortland Street. That's like their neighbors' soap opera. Errol Shand was in The Cult, as well as Momoa's Chief of War. And then people may recognize Lucianne Buchanan. She's gorgeous. New Legends of Monkey, but she's best known as Rose Larkin, the beloved character from The Night Agent. I know, I say beloved, it's only been 2 seasons, but people really love this Night Agent show. But with that, let's just get to our spoiler-free thoughts on Evil Dead Burn. Josh, I'll start with you. Really interested to hear what you thought of this.
I did not care for this movie.
Wow! Oh my gosh.
I mentioned earlier, I love the Evil Dead films for many, many reasons. This one fell flat for me because I felt like it didn't strike the tone of what I feel Evil Dead is. It was very dark, emotionally dark. I've read things from the director, about how his intention was to make this like the most brutal of the series and all that. And like, that's a Hostel movie. Like, I don't need that in my Evil Dead. As I mentioned earlier in the 2013 remake and then in Evil Dead Rise, there are moments of levity, which this film really doesn't have in any substantial way, as well as the fact that there's no one to root for. I don't think. I wasn't a fan of any of the characters. The one I'm supposed to root for never gave me anything to work with as far as like why I should care whether or not she makes it out of this house. I felt like there were some inconsistencies with Evil Dead lore, which I'm not usually a big stickler for, especially considering how wildly different the films are. I felt like this one took things that I know about Evil Dead and the nature of these demons and threw them out the window in ways that felt disrespectful,
Wow.
which seems silly for our series where stop motion skeletons are fighting people, at certain points, and there's all kinds of weird stuff happening. It felt more like it belonged in like the new French extremity films from the late 2000s, something like Frontiers or something, more like that. Yeah, where those films are they're dour, you kind of expect that. Like, maybe if this wasn't an Evil Dead film, I might have liked it more, but it is, and I don't.
Yeah, that's, it's weird. Franchises are getting that a lot now. The studios will bring in, say, some sort of indie director or somebody, and then the reaction will be, I love the franchise. This didn't feel like a franchise movie. Mike and I had that experience with Scream 7. It didn't feel like a Scream movie. It was really weird.
Yeah, has all the parts, but didn't have, I don't know how you explain it more than just you can feel it visually and it just doesn't feel it. And I kind of feel what Josh is saying here too.
Yeah.
But I also think that, this year specifically, there's already been a better Evil Dead movie than this Evil Dead movie, and that's The Mummy from a couple of months ago, which I didn't like that one either, but it's a better Evil Dead movie than this. Which,
Mike had actually,
movie.
I was waiting to tee that up for Mike because I didn't feel Evil Dead as much on The Mummy. I don't know why. I guess I was trying to be more open-minded to a Universal Monster reimagining, but Mike was very much like, this is an Evil Dead script. And it came out that he had written it as that and then refashioned it for whatever reason. But strangely, Cronin is an EP on this, and I have heard that they are trying to create a book after the success of Evil Dead Rise, and I'm wondering if Cronin had a touch to this or had input to this, because this feels like a Cronin movie, actually, in a lot of ways. It feels a lot like The Mummy a bit. But Mike, while we're here with you, why not? Yeah. What are your spoiler-free thoughts?
Yeah, so like Josh said, I went into this, I was kind of excited because for me, Rise was great. I thought Rise is the best of the last three. It awakened my love for it. I love the portrayal of the Deadites. I love, what was her name, Evie or Ellie or whatever. Such a great Deadite performance. It's so wonderful. And the red hair, there's an obsession since, I know we've all rewatched it. There's an obsession with the female leads always having red or pink hair in these last three films. Yeah. That's something that they really are hitting in on. They even purposely have her in Rise dye her hair. Of course, Alice's hair's kind of got a red pink vibe to it.
And the boots. Don't forget the boots.
Yes.
It's a big thing.
They all wear those boots. So it's an interesting, there are little touchstones, but this does not feel like an Evil Dead movie. You hit it right on the head. It looks different. It's got that weird blue-gray. It feels like an indie horror film. It looks exactly like Infested. After I saw Infested, I was like, this looks the exact same. They look so similar. They felt similar, but I still enjoyed it. There's still enough here for me to latch on to. There was still enough moments. The grandma character brought enough laughs for me that I had a good enough time with her. She was the only levity. And I thought that was funny enough to keep me interested. I took my son, who just started jumping on the bandwagon. He watched the older ones with me, he's almost 15. We did a festival on Friday, and he is now a complete lover of the series. And that's what I love, is that I was able to introduce that to him. But we got to mention the terrification of horror. Why do we have to continue to do these extreme gore gags? Like, why do we need so much over the top gore?
Terrifier-ification.
Yeah, terrifier-ification. Everything's like the Terrifier movies now. You have to be so extreme in your gooey gore that this was like Josh said, it's too much where this didn't feel light. It didn't feel funny. It felt too realistic in its gore. Whereas the gore in Evil Dead movies always feels kind of off. Either the color's really bright red. It doesn't feel real. This tried to be too realistic. And like you said, I don't think it was disrespectful per se, but the way that they do, kind of lean into the Deadite portrayal makes them almost seem more like cannibalistic animals. They didn't seem like they were these evil, kind of low-key characters playing and having fun with their prey. It didn't seem like that. They just seemed like they were fast, mean, almost like Zack Snyder zombies. I mean, they just were so aggressive. Hey. They're just too aggressive. They didn't feel like Deadites to me. And then the yellow, almost cat-like eyes. There's a lot of changes here that did kind of bother me. But when I pulled that back and I just let the movie take me, I had a fucking fun time with it. Like, it's a ride. Even the intro, which ties back to Rise, I think is cool that they're trying to make this into a trilogy. We have Wrath, I think, that's coming next, and they're all going to be tied in together, and this is going to be its own little thing. And
thank you for mentioning that, by the way. They already wrapped May. They wrapped production in May.
Come back for the spoiler section. We'll talk about some little post-credit sequences that kind of lead to where Wrath is going to go. I did like this as a horror movie. It is my least favorite of the Evil Dead films. But for me, the Evil Dead films are so solid that I like every single one of them still. I mean, if I was to grade this, I'd probably give it a B-. It's still barely a pass, maybe a C. It's passable. There's moments, but you could tell that they wanted to tease us, make us think that they're going to give into the highlights and tropes of the Evil Dead films, but they didn't. Instead of the chainsaw, there's another weapon, and there's a chainsaw right there teasing, and you're thinking they're going to grab it. There's little things where he's like, nope, this isn't your Evil Dead movie. This is my Evil Dead movie. And very much the director wanted us to realize that this is not your mom and dad's Evil Dead. This is my Evil Dead movie. And whether you like that or not, this is what you got. There are things I enjoyed. I did have a good time with it. I'm glad my son went. We were hollering and hooting. I could have done without 20 minutes of the film. It's too long. I know. And it shouldn't be an hour and 50 minutes. There's a big sag right around. The movie just sags and slows down. It takes a while to build back up. It takes way too much build up. The nice thing about these Evil Dead films is they almost always have a formula to them. You meet your people. They go where they're going to go. They read the book, or they open the book, or they hear the words. The Deadites come. Boom, one by one, they turn, they take off, and then they fight a big bad. This is not that. This is very different. This is more like a family drama wrapped up with some Evil Dead mythology. I'm still going to give it a slight watch, but I wanted more.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a soft skip. I have such a reverence and a love for the Evil Dead films. And it's weird when you look at the Evil Dead remake, the original and Dead by Dawn, it's odd that they had essentially been remaking the same concept, right? This formula. They go to the cabin and then, it's streaming through the forest and doing that. With the reboot, they attempted to open up the universe, and we saw some new things. The blood rain, the Necronomicon looked different and obscene, perverse. And then Evil Dead Rise, it's interesting. It pays such an homage to Evil Dead, as does this film, Evil Dead Burn. They are establishing hallmarks of the Evil Dead film, right? So, Mike, it's funny you mentioned that there's a formula because, we meet the characters in very quick succession. The Deadites show up, and then there's the struggle or whatever. But we're starting to see these things where the final girl has a particular look. She has a particular trauma that she's coming back from somehow. And this is a family thing. Obviously, there's death. But unfortunately, this one, even though it opens up the universe, we don't actually get to an isolated setting until quite some time into the film. I agree with everybody that the Terrifier-esque gore here was so... It just turned me off. And it's weird, watching the other two movies, I was like, okay, they're not doing anything that isn't done in the other films. It's just that they kept going with it and just being Terrifier about it. And I did not like that change, right? I don't know if this will surprise you guys, but Vanacek has never gone to film school, and I think that is his problem. God bless Sam Raimi and Ghost House. I think they rope in people like Cronin, they rope in people like Vanacek, and then they let them go, right? But I think they probably should have stepped in and be like, I think this needs to, change. We say this a lot, Mike and I. This is tonally all over the place. It goes from a family drama to the Deadites to John Wick action style oneers. I'm like, what? I'm going to say this. This is a home invasion movie with Deadites. It's crazy. And Josh, like you said, I have zero patience for a franchise entry that is going to break its own rules and the established rules of the franchise. I just shook my head and, why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense with the lore. And not only that, they would present a situation or a character and then completely have them do a 180 in the next scene. The director is gorgeous. I'm like, hello. But I think he might need some remedial snapping up of cinema filmmaking, because there were issues with Infested as well. I mean, there's a spiral sequence of the hallway of spiders, and I was like, how long is this going to go? It just kept going and going. And unfortunately, that's kind of this movie. Scenes keep going and going and going, and there's no impact to it. It's such a mess. So unfortunately, it's a soft skip for me. Any other final thoughts before we head into the pod roll, Josh?
I feel
follow up on what we've been talking about?
Well, talking about the film as, in terms of whether it's a watch or a skip, I don't feel like there's anybody who's an Evil Dead fan who's going to skip the movie. Like, that's just not
Oh, of course.
not
Yeah. It's
not
like a
how we
Marvel
roll.
film.
Yeah,
Right.
you're gonna see it. I just, yeah, I think we'll talk more about it in the spoiler section, but I think that there are things in the film that upset me enough that I don't know that I'm going to watch it again, which is rare for me because I've seen all of these a lot of times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah. Yeah. I found it fun. I found it fast paced, but again, one of the hallmarks of this franchise is practical effects. That finale CGI was absolutely atrocious.
Yeah.
Why did they do that? I mean, again, I understand let them cook. That's the mentality of Ghost House, but sometimes you got to help them before they burn the damn kitchen down. I do still think there's enough here, and there is so much excitement. Afterwards, my son kind of mentioned that it was almost like a running a marathon. You can't catch your breath. There's just so much. And 1 second you think that they're out of danger, boom, they're hit with something else, and boom and boom and boom. And there's just so many sequences after another, and so much gore and so much violence that you just become so desensitized to it that you're not sure what the impact was here. The splattery effects in this weren't fun. They were very realistic. They were very mean-spirited. They were very just the opposite of what this franchise was kind of known of outside of the 2013 film. This just goes everything but the kitchen sink, like you said, and way too much over it. I've seen some people who really like this. They think it's better than Rise. I don't think that at all. I still think it falls at the bottom. There are fans that do, and there are because they like the extreme gore of it. But I just, like you said, who do you root for? The only reason I rooted for Alice is because I hated everybody else with a passion, like despise every other character. I hated this family, and I think that was the point. For us, this show's about whether you should spend your money in the theaters and go see this. I think you should. I think you guys are like, even if you're a fan, wait and see it at home. It's up to you to make your decision.
I feel like there might be a generational thing here also, in terms of what you grew up with, not only in terms of Evil Dead films, but just in horror films in general. So if you grew up and the films that brought you to horror are things like Terrifier, which is a lot of kids these days, and young 20-somethings, or even in anywhere from the late 2000s on during that torture porn phase, if that was what you started with, then maybe this is going to be more your vibe. That's not where I came to these films, to horror from.
And it's funny you say that because I think the younger generation that would criticize our critiques of this film would just do the whole okay, boomer or whatever. Yeah. But you know what? Eventually they'll be the boomer who's and actually there were some young kids who snuck into my screening, and they were sitting on each other's laps and taking selfies and walking in and out. I don't even know what that means. At any rate, please join us definitely for the spoiler, because we definitely are going to have some stuff to talk about here. We're going to do our pod roll. If you love us, you'll love The Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema, Not a Bomb, the OG's Night of the Living podcast, and then our YouTube brothers in arms, the two Johns over at And Now for Something a Little Bit Different, who we did the crossover episode for Supergirl, which was great. Wild Dream Twitch, Daniel and David. Happy birthday, David. From the Wild Dream podcast, as well as Death by DVD. Harry is going to start. Linus is going to get back. There's going to be some new episodes, so look out for that. Raiders of the Podcast, of course. Backlook Cinema podcast with Zoe. Caliber 9 from Outer Space. Feminine Critique. Talk Without Rhythm with Garo. Josh, what do you have coming up with Screen Anarchy, or even anything else that you might be lining up for presentation?
Well, I believe as this podcast actually appears, I will most likely be on a plane to Montreal to cover the Fantasia Film Festival for a week. So that will be a lot of fun, and that's usually one of my most productive weeks of the year. So you'll hear all about the films that you'll be hearing about for the next year first at ScreenAnarchy for those. And I do actually also have a guest spot booked for The Gentleman's Guide coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks as well. So
excellent.
Look out for that one.
That's great. And I imagine I've been on the site. It's ScreenAnarchy.com.
Yes, ScreenAnarchy.com.
And then, of course, all social medias, yeah?
Yeah, all their social medias. You can find me some places as Hateful Josh.
Yes.
Mostly Blue Sky. I think my other socials are pretty well locked down, but Blue Sky is open.
Excellent.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you. And then, Mike, parting thoughts?
Just one last thing, since there were so many movies that came out, go and see The Invite and go and see Gail Daughtry. If you love comedies, we don't review a lot of comedies here, but if you do love comedies, go and see those. Both are wonderful. So yeah, get out there, see more films.
Gail Daughtry is really fun. I really like that one. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Official title, folks, is Gail Daughtry and the Celebrity Sex Pass.
Yeah.
There you go.
If you like The State and David Wayne, it's his best, to me, it's his best film since the Wet Hot American Summers. And The Invite, I really did like a lot. So I say see that as well.
Yeah. At any rate, all right, folks, as always, be kind, be open, be vulnerable. That's where the art is. Come back for that spoilered review. We have a lot to talk about. I didn't even mention that this film is essentially a Believe the Victims film for Final Girls. Which
it's a Me Too, yeah.
It's kind of a plus. At any rate, yes, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.